My name is Clara, I'm 29, and I became an accountant for the love of order. I never imagined I'd need my skills with numbers to defend myself from my own parents. When you're raised by people who see money not as a tool, but as a form of power, it changes you in ways you don't fully grasp until much later. So when my mother's group text about a non-negotiable family cruise to the Caribbean popped up on my phone, my stomach instantly clenched into a tight, familiar ball of dread. With my family, these trips were never gifts. They were transactions with hidden costs and emotional IOUs. A small, hopeful part of me wished it would be different this time, but I knew better. Before I get into the rest of this, I'm curious. Let me know in the comments if you've ever had a family member cross a financial line like using your card without asking, and hit subscribe if you've ever had to draw a hard line with the very people who were supposed to be on your side. The twisted roots of my family's relationship with money go way back. To an outsider, we looked like a postcard. My father, Robert, ran a seemingly successful real estate development firm in downtown Denver. My mother, Eleanor, was the perfect suburban wife, famous for her dinner parties that were the envy of the neighborhood. Our sprawling house in the foothills was a testament to upper-middle-class prosperity. But inside that prosperity was a house of cards. My dad lived by the mantra that image was reality. "People want to work with winners, Clara," he'd say, signing the papers for another lease luxury sedan. "No one's going to trust a developer who drives a junker." By the time I was 10, I could tell you the difference between a Patek Philippe and a Tag Heuer, spot a designer handbag from 50 paces, and understood a fundamental family rule. Looking rich was more important than being rich. My mother was just as committed to the charade. She was a hawk, tracking the vacations, kitchen remodels, and new cars of everyone in their social sphere. "The Millers are going to Aspen," she'd declare at the dinner table. "We should look into a villa in Tuscany. It's far more impressive." It was never about having fun, it was about winning. Money was a subject my parents never discussed openly with me or my brother. Bills were dealt with behind closed doors, often with raised voices. I remember the mortifying moments at restaurants when a credit card would be declined, followed by a hushed argument and my mother's strained smile as she produced a different card. My brother, Leo, who was 4 years older than me, absorbed my father's lessons all too well. He got his first credit card in high school and managed to max it out in just a few months. When I was 15, that carefully curated image didn't just crack, it shattered. My dad's business, which had been teetering on the edge for years, was only held up by a web of second mortgages and high-interest personal loans. Then my mom found out he had a secret condo downtown and a relationship with one of his employees. The divorce was cataclysmic. Their fight over what was left exposed the truth of our financial situation to the world and to me. The house had been mortgaged to the hilt. Dad's company was barely solvent. Mom had her own secret credit cards he knew nothing about. I watched them argue over who would get the tax benefit for claiming me as a dependent, while in the next breath, they'd fight about who was stuck paying for my future education. College became my escape route, but neither of them would chip in unless I chose a career they approved of. Dad wanted me to go into real estate to one day take over his business. Mom pushed for me to become a lawyer like her own brother. I chose accounting for myself. After a childhood of financial chaos, the clean, undeniable truth of numbers felt like a sanctuary. Those 4 years were a grind. I worked 30 hours a week at the campus bookstore and another 15 as a math tutor. I still graduated with a mountain of student debt, around $60,000. But every late night studying and every party I missed felt worth it. For the first time in my life, I had a true picture of my own finances. There were no secrets, no smoke and mirrors, just the cold, hard facts in black and white. My first job out of college was with a respectable accounting firm in Boulder. The starting salary felt like a fortune after years of living on ramen noodles. I got a small one-bedroom apartment, furnished it with practical secondhand pieces, and drafted my very first real budget. The day I hung my framed diploma on the wall, I felt this incredible wave of pride. This little apartment, as modest as it was a symbol of my financial freedom. That freedom, it turned out, made me a target. It started with Mom asking for a small loan to redo her bathroom in the condo she'd downsized to. Then Dad needed help with a temporary cash flow problem at his company. My brother Leo wanted me to co-sign a loan for a new car because his credit was, in his words, unfairly ruined by his recent divorce. The requests always came with a sense of manufactured urgency, and the plans for repayment were always conveniently vague. After I lent my mother $3,000 that was promptly absorbed into her endless renovation and never seen again, I started seeing a therapist. My therapist, Dr. Evans, helped me see the dysfunctional financial web my family had woven and gave me the tools to build boundaries. Your financial health is a part of your overall well-being, Clara, she told me. You wouldn't let your family compromise your physical health. Your finances deserve the same level of protection. It took 2 years of weekly sessions, but I finally built my own set of rules. I would not lend money to my family. I could give them gifts for birthdays or holidays if I chose, but only what I could afford, and with no expectation of it being paid back. I would not co-sign on any loans or share any credit accounts, and most importantly, I had to be direct and transparent about these rules, no matter how much conflict it caused. My parents tested these new boundaries relentlessly. Dad would reframe his requests as business investment opportunities instead of loans. Mom would use emotional blackmail, asking if I truly loved her, if I was willing to let her suffer. But each time I stood my ground, the emotional storm that followed was a little shorter than the last. By my 27th birthday, they had mostly resigned themselves to my financial independence, though I still got the occasional sarcastic remark about my stinginess at holiday dinners. That fragile peace was about to be blown to pieces by a single group text, one that would show me just how little my boundaries ever really meant to them. The text landed on a Tuesday morning in March while I was prepping for a big client meeting. My mom had started a new group chat named Kingsley Family Caribbean Cruise 2025. It included me, my brother Leo, and his wife Maya, my Aunt Susan, and my cousins Ben and Chloe. The first message was pure Eleanor. Big news, everyone. I've decided we are all desperately in need of a real family reunion this summer, and I've found the perfect trip. A 10-day Caribbean cruise. This is mandatory attendance. Time to heal old wounds and make some precious new memories. Eleanor has spoken. LOL. The red flags were practically waving off my screen. Mandatory attendance and heal old wounds in the same announcement was classic maternal manipulation. The over-the-top capitalization was her way of showing she wouldn't take no for an answer. And referring to herself in the third person? That was her tell. It meant she was dug in and expected total compliance. The replies started rolling in. Leo and Maya sent a string of celebratory emojis. Aunt Susan asked about the dates. The cousins chimed in with excited exclamation points. I tucked my phone away, deciding to deal with my client first and figure out how to phrase my reservations later. By lunchtime, my mother had flooded the chat with 14 more messages. There were links to the cruise line, lists of potential shore excursions, and questions about everyone's cabin preferences. She kept dropping my name. Clara loves to scuba dive, so we absolutely must do the advanced wreck dive. And Clara has always wanted to see a real rainforest, so the zip-lining tour is a non-negotiable. None of this was true. I had never mentioned either of those things. That evening, I called Leo to feel him out. He sounded genuinely surprised by my caution. "Mom said you were totally on board with this," he said. "She told me you two had talked about it a couple of weeks ago." "That never happened, Leo," I told him. This text was the first I'd heard of it. He let out a heavy sigh. "Yeah, that sounds about right. She's been going on and on about this cruise for a month, but every time I asked if you were in, she'd get vague and change the subject. The pressure mounted over the next few days." Mom created a shared online drive for the trip, complete with a color-coded itinerary, booking information, and sign-up sheets for activities. The cruise ship was top of the line. Every excursion was a premium experience. A shared spreadsheet for expenses appeared, but the columns for actual costs were conspicuously blank. Every time I tried to ask about the budget in the group chat, my questions were ignored or batted away with comments like, "We deserve to treat ourselves after all we've been through," or, "Don't be a killjoy, Clara. Life is for living." All the while, private messages started trickling in, revealing the full scope of my mother's manipulation. Aunt Susan texted me, "So glad you convinced Eleanor to finally plan this. She said you've been wanting a big family trip for years." My cousin Chloe wrote, "Your mom mentioned you might be able to help out with some of the excursion costs, since your job is going so well. That's so generous of you." My anxiety shot through the roof. It was clear my mother was positioning me to cover a huge chunk of the expenses, while telling everyone else the whole thing was my idea. It was a classic triangulation maneuver, just like Dr. Evans had taught me to recognize. A week and a half after the first text, Mom set up a family Zoom call to finalize the plans. I joined from my desk at work during my lunch break, a notepad in front of me, ready to demand some real answers about the money. The call was a masterclass in deflection. Every time I tried to bring up the budget, someone would cut in with a question about dinner seating or what to pack. After 45 minutes of this circus, I'd had enough and cut through the noise. "Before we book anything," I said firmly, "I need to get a clear idea of the expected cost per person. I have my own budget I need to stick to." The call went silent for a beat, and then my mother let out a loud, dismissive laugh. "Oh, Clara, always so worried about her precious budget." "Fine. The cruise fare is about $2,000 per person. Flights will be around $1,000, and activities, well, that depends on what we do, but you should probably set aside another $2,000 just to be safe. If you can't swing it, I guess you'll just have to stay home." The shame in her voice was a weapon she'd honed for years, designed to make me feel small and petty for being financially responsible. I could see everyone on the call shifting uncomfortably, their eyes darting away from their webcams. I kept my face a perfect mask of neutrality, even as rage boiled in my stomach. "Thank you for the numbers. That's very helpful for my planning," I replied calmly, already knowing there was no way I was spending $5,000 on a trip I never even wanted. My cool response seemed to throw her off, and she quickly pivoted to debating the merits of different drink packages. I stayed quiet for the rest of the call, just watching her. She had expertly cast herself as the generous matriarch and me as the difficult, ungrateful daughter, all for asking a simple question about money. After we hung up, I typed out a polite, firm message declining the trip, using work commitments as my excuse. But before I hit send, I decided to wait a day to make sure my decision was coming from a place of clarity, not just anger. That decision to wait turned out to be more critical than I could have ever imagined, because the next day, the situation escalated into something out of a nightmare. Friday began like any other day. I got to the office early to go over my notes for a client presentation, poured myself a coffee from the break room, and sat down at my desk. At 9:17 a.m., my phone buzzed with a credit card notification. I glanced at it, figured it was just the charge from the coffee shop I'd stopped at earlier, and ignored it. But then it buzzed again, and again, and a fourth time. 4 purchase alerts in less than 60 seconds. That was not normal. I unlocked my phone and my stomach plummeted. 4 separate charges from a major airline, each for $5,000, had just hit my primary credit card, $20,000, billed in the last 5 minutes. My first thought was that I was a victim of random fraud. I immediately dialed my credit card company, my hands shaking as I navigated the automated menus until I finally got a human in the fraud department. Yes, I'm seeing 4 charges from American Airlines, made today at 9:15 a.m. Mountain Time, the representative confirmed, each for 1 first-class ticket from Denver to St. Martin, departing June 12th and returning June 22nd. The confirmation emails were sent to the personal email address we have on file for you. Would you like me to read you the names of the passengers?" A cold, sickening certainty washed over me as she read them aloud. Eleanor Kingsley, Robert Kingsley, Leo Kingsley, Maya Kingsley, my parents, my brother, and his wife. $20,000 in luxury flights for their Caribbean cruise, all charged to my credit card without my permission. "I did not authorize these charges," I said, my voice surprisingly steady given the inferno of rage building inside me. "I need to dispute every single one of them, right now." While the representative started the dispute process, I logged into my personal email on my work computer, and there they were. 4 booking confirmations from the airline, each one showing my credit card as the method of payment. What was even more disturbing was that all 4 emails were marked as read, even though I had never opened them. Someone hadn't just used my credit card, they had accessed my email account too. The sheer audacity of it was staggering. Just then, as I was still on the phone with the credit card company, my phone buzzed with a text message. It was from my mom. "Thank you so much for your amazing gift to the family, sweetie. First class will make the long flight so much more bearable for your father's bad back. I can't wait for our special trip. Love you to the moon and back." The timing was deliberate, calculated. She had waited for a time she knew I'd be in a meeting, used my stored card information, logged into my email to cover her tracks by marking the confirmations as read, and then sent a text acting as if I'd offered the tickets as a gift. The whole thing was a premeditated act of fraud. I finished the call with the credit card company. The charges were disputed, my card was locked, and a new one was being overnighted. The agent confirmed they would launch an investigation into the unauthorized use and advised me to file a police report, especially since my email had also been compromised. My hands were still trembling as I called the airline. The customer service agent there confirmed the bookings. The tickets were purchased online, she told me. The person who bought them used payment information that was saved to your loyalty account from a previous flight. Now that you've disputed the charge, would you like me to go ahead and cancel these reservations? Yes, I said, please cancel them all, immediately. My next call was to my email provider to report the security breach and reset all my passwords. The support specialist confirmed that my account had been accessed from an unrecognized device early that morning, using my correct password. "It looks like someone had your password," he said. "I strongly suggest you enable 2-factor authentication and check any other accounts that might be linked." By 11:30 a.m., I had locked down my email, changed the passwords on all my financial accounts, and documented every detail with screenshots and call log numbers. Only then did I reply to my mother's text. I did not buy those tickets. I have disputed the fraudulent charges with my credit card company, and the reservations have been canceled. Do not ever use my financial information without my explicit consent again. Her reply was instant, a torrent of feigned outrage. "What on earth are you talking about? We talked about this on the Zoom call. You said you would help with the flight since you couldn't help with the planning. The whole family is counting on this. Why are you trying to embarrass me like this?" This level of gaslighting might have worked on a younger me, but years of therapy had given me a powerful detector for it. We had never, not for 1 second, discussed me paying for anyone's flights, let alone first-class tickets that cost $5,000 apiece. Then my phone started ringing off the hook. Mom, Dad, Leo, Aunt Susan. I silenced it and forced myself to focus on my work for the rest of the day, letting the professional, logical part of my brain take over, while the emotional side reeled from the betrayal. By the time I left the office, my voicemail was full and my text messages were a dumpster fire of family drama, ranging from confusion to fury. Leo sent a text claiming he knew nothing about the tickets until Mom called him in tears, saying I had cruelly taken back my gift. Dad sent a text demanding I call him at once to clear up this mess. Aunt Susan sent a long, rambling message about the importance of family unity and how money should never come between blood relatives. I felt strangely calm as I drove home that evening. The violation was so flagrant, so far beyond the pale, that all my usual anxiety about family conflict had been replaced by a cold, hard certainty. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a gray area. It was financial fraud and identity theft. It was a calculated betrayal by the two people who were supposed to protect me most. That certainty was about to be put to the test. As I pulled into the parking lot of my apartment building, I saw my father's gleaming black Lexus parked in a visitor spot. He was leaning against it, arms crossed, waiting for me. At 62, Robert Kingsley still cultivated the look of a top-tier executive, from his tailored blazer to his blindingly white veneers. As I got out of my car, only the tight set of his jaw betrayed his stress. "Clara, honey," he began, moving in for a hug. I held up a hand, stopping him. "Why are you here, Dad?" I asked, my keys clutched in my fist. "And how do you even know where I live? I never gave you my new address." He waved a dismissive hand. "Your mother has it for her emergency contacts list. Look, we need to sort out this little miscommunication about the flights." "There is no miscommunication," I said, walking towards the building's main entrance. "Mom used my credit card to buy $20,000 worth of plane tickets without my permission. That's called fraud, Dad, not a miscommunication." He hurried to catch up, his friendly tone starting to fray at the edges. "Your mother was just trying to get the family together. You know how much this trip means to her. She thought you two had an understanding about you helping with the costs." "We had no such understanding," I said, stopping at the security door. "I never ever agreed to pay for anyone's flights, let alone first class." "Okay, so maybe there was a breakdown in communication," he admitted, his inner salesman shifting gears. "But the fact is, the whole family is distraught. Your mother is a mess. Leo and Maya already put in for their vacation time. Your actions are causing a huge problem." I felt that old, familiar pressure building in my chest, the ingrained instinct to be the peacemaker, to fix the messes my parents made. I took a deep breath, remembering Dr. Evans's words. "You didn't cause it, you can't control it, and you can't cure it." The problem was created when Mom stole my credit card information and hacked into my email, I stated flatly. I reported the theft and reversed the charges. That is the correct and logical response. My dad's carefully constructed facade finally crumbled. His face grew red as he stepped toward me. "After everything we've done for you, this is how you treat us. You accuse your own mother of being a thief? You ruin the one chance this family has to reconnect? What exactly have you done for me, Dad?" I asked quietly. "You wouldn't help me with college unless I majored in what you wanted. I worked 2 jobs and took on $60,000 in loans to get my degree. I have paid my own way since the day I graduated. We gave you a life," he spat. "We raised you. We put clothes on your back. And now that you have this fancy career and your own place, you're too good to help your family have one nice vacation? One trip to bring everyone together?" I pulled my phone from my pocket, opened the voice memo app, and discreetly hit record. Something in his escalating voice told me I needed to document this. "Did you know Mom was going to use my card?" I asked him directly. He flinched, then seemed to deflate a little. "We talked about the options. Your brother's credit is shot because of the divorce. Your cousin Ben just got laid off. Your mother's cards are all close to their limits from the kitchen remodel. So you just decided to use mine without asking," I pressed. "We were going to tell you," he mumbled. "Present it to you as a done deal. That way you couldn't get anxious and back out. Your mother figured you'd be more accepting once it was all booked." The casual way he described their premeditated crime was sickening. "Have you and Mom done this before? Used other people's credit cards without telling them?" His silence was all the answer I needed. "Your brother needed help with some bills last year," he finally admitted. "He couldn't get a loan, so your mother helped him out by using your cousin Chloe's card. It was fine. Chloe was a little upset at first, but she understood when we explained it was a family emergency." I felt a wave of nausea. "So this is your system. You and Mom just take money from whoever has available credit and call it a family emergency." Don't be so dramatic, he snapped, his anger returning. This is how families work. They help each other. You have plenty of money and almost no expenses. You could easily afford this trip if you weren't so damn selfish. This conversation is over, I said, turning to scan my key fob. Please leave, or I'm calling building security. He grabbed my arm, his fingers digging into my skin. You are going to fix this, he hissed. Your mother has already told everyone what a generous gift you gave. If you cancel those charges now, you'll tear this family apart. Is that what you want, Clara? To be the one who destroyed us? I wrenched my arm away. What I want is for my family to respect me and to follow the law. Using someone's credit card without their consent is a crime. I am not going to protect you or Mom from the consequences of your actions. You ungrateful little brat, he snarled, all pretense of civility gone. We should have known you'd turn out like this, always thinking you're so much better than us with your spreadsheets and your budgets. If you go through with this, don't ever expect to be welcomed in this family again. You'll be on your own, completely. I held up my phone, making sure he could see the recording in progress. Thank you for making your position perfectly clear. I think we're done here. His eyes went wide when he saw the screen. Without another word, he spun around, marched back to his car, and sped out of the parking lot. I stumbled into my apartment and collapsed onto the sofa, the adrenaline finally crashing, leaving me shaky and exhausted. My phone was still buzzing. A text from Leo caught my eye. Clara, I'm so sorry. I had a feeling they were planning something, but I had no idea they'd actually use your card. They've done this to me before, too. Can we talk tomorrow? Then another one, from my cousin Chloe. Just heard what happened. They did the same thing to me last year for Leo's car repair. Said it was a family emergency. It cost me $3,000 that I never saw again. These messages were a gut punch, but they also confirmed my worst suspicions. This wasn't a one-time thing. My parents had a long-standing history of financially abusing their own family, weaving a toxic web of obligation, guilt, and deceit. I spent the rest of the night awake, researching identity theft, family financial abuse, and what I needed to do to protect myself. By sunrise, I had a plan. But I was still underestimating just how far my family would go to protect their system of exploitation. On Saturday morning, a message from my mother announced an emergency family meeting at Aunt Susan's house that afternoon. All family members must attend to resolve this unfortunate situation, she wrote. 2 p.m. sharp. This impacts all of us. My first impulse was to say no, but then a text from Leo came through. Please come, Clara. I think it's time everyone knew the whole truth. I'll have your back. I arrived at my aunt's house at exactly 2 o'clock, bracing myself. The scene inside was even worse than I had feared. It wasn't just my immediate family, the entire extended clan was there. Aunt Susan and Uncle Mark, cousins Ben and Chloe with their partners, even my elderly grandmother, who almost never left her assisted living facility. 14 people in all, their faces a mixture of concern and thinly veiled hostility. My mother had set the stage in the living room. She was on the sofa, dabbing at her red-rimmed eyes, with my father standing protectively behind her, a hand on her shoulder. They were the picture of wounded victims. Clara, my mother began as I took the last empty chair. Everyone was so excited for this healing trip, and your sudden change of heart has caused so much pain and confusion. Before I could even open my mouth, Aunt Susan chimed in. Your mother worked on this for months, Clara. She poured her heart into it for everyone, especially after the rough couple of years we've all had. I just don't understand why you would agree to help and then humiliate her like this. I never agreed to buy tickets for anyone, I said, my voice steady. I never offered to pay for any part of this trip. In fact, I clearly stated on the Zoom call that I had serious concerns about the cost. That's not true, my mother cut in. You said you wanted to contribute since you couldn't help with the planning. Everyone on the call heard you. Several relatives nodded in agreement. I noticed that Leo and Chloe were looking at the floor. What exactly did you hear me say? I challenged, scanning the room. Can anyone here quote the exact words I used to offer to spend $20,000 on first-class plane tickets? The room was thick with uncomfortable silence until Uncle Mark spoke up. Well, I wasn't on the call, but Eleanor told us you had generously offered to handle the flights as your contribution. Eleanor told you, I repeated, but none of you actually heard me say it, because I never did. Clara has been under a lot of stress at her new job, my mother said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Her doctor thinks she might be having some memory issues related to anxiety. We've just been trying to be supportive during this difficult time. The audacity of the lie left me breathless. My mother had just implied to our entire family that I was mentally unstable, that my memory was failing, all to cover her own fraud. What doctor? I finally managed to say. I am not seeing any doctor for anxiety or memory problems. My mom exchanged a pained, knowing look with my dad. Sweetheart, we don't need to air your private health issues in front of everybody. The point is, we need to support you and make sure this special family time doesn't get ruined. The gaslighting was so profound it was almost artistic. She was simultaneously branding me as mentally unwell while casting herself as the loving, concerned mother who was just trying to protect my privacy, even as she announced my condition to the whole family. This is insane, I said, my voice rising. I am not having memory problems. What happened is simple. Mom used my credit card without my consent to buy airline tickets. When I found the fraudulent charges, I reported them, which is what any sane person would do. But why would your mother need to steal your card, dear? My grandmother asked, her voice filled with genuine confusion. You offered to help. We all heard about your generous gift. You all heard what Mom told you, not what I said, I clarified. I never made that offer. This is exactly what the doctor was talking about, Mom interjected smoothly. These confabulations, where she invents alternate realities. We just have to be patient with her. I could feel the trap closing around me. Anything I said would just be used as more proof of my supposed instability. She had created a perfect checkmate, a narrative where my testimony was inherently unreliable. Then, to my complete surprise, Chloe stood up. I believe Clara, she said quietly, because the same thing happened to me last year. Aunt Eleanor told me there was a family emergency with Leo's car, and she used my credit card to pay for the repairs. She promised Leo would pay me back in a week. He never did. When I asked about it later, everyone acted like I had agreed to give them the money as a gift. The room went dead silent. My mother's face hardened. Chloe, that was a totally different situation. Leo was in a jam and needed help right away. You offered to help. No, I didn't, Chloe insisted. You called and asked for my card number to order some party supplies online because you said yours wasn't working. I didn't find out about the car repair until the charge showed up on my statement. A crack had appeared in my mother's perfect facade. My cousin Ben shifted in his seat, then spoke up. They used my card for the down payment on Mom's kitchen remodel last summer. Said it was just to hold the contractor until their home equity loan was approved. The loan got rejected, and I got stuck with an $8,000 bill. One after another, the stories came out. Another cousin whose card was used to buy new furniture for my grandmother. Aunt Susan's own daughter, who got stuck with Uncle Mark's medical co-pays. Every story was the same. A manufactured emergency, a temporary use of someone else's credit, promises of repayment, and then gaslighting and accusations of selfishness when the victim dared to ask for their money back. Finally, Leo broke his silence. Clara is telling the truth, he said, his voice shaking. Mom and Dad have been doing this for years. They did it to me so many times that I destroyed my credit and maxed out every card I had. It was a huge part of why Maya and I almost divorced. She found all the debt I was hiding for them. Maya nodded, her face grim. We almost had to declare bankruptcy because of the loans and credit card debt Leo took on for his parents. And when we tried to set boundaries, they told the whole family we were being ungrateful and selfish. The tearful victim act was gone. My mother's face was a mask of cold fury. I cannot believe my own children would turn on me like this, after everything I have done for this family. We only ever borrowed money when we had no other choice, and we always meant to pay it back when things got better." "When did things ever get better, Mom?" Leo asked, his voice raw. "When have you ever paid anyone back? My credit has been ruined for 3 years. I can't even qualify to rent an apartment on my own." My dad stepped forward, his voice tight with rage. "That's enough. We did what was necessary to keep this family from going under. If we had to take the initiative sometimes instead of begging for handouts, it was for the good of everyone. The lack of gratitude in this room is disgusting." "Initiative?" I repeated, incredulous. "Is that your new word for identity theft and wire fraud?" "Don't be so dramatic," he snapped. "This is a family, not some business deal with strangers." "Families don't steal from each other," I shot back, "and they don't lie and manipulate and gaslight people when they get caught. If you take this any further," Dad threatened, his voice low and menacing, "you will no longer be a part of this family. I guarantee it." The room was electric with tension. This was never about a cruise. It was about a deeply ingrained system of financial abuse and control that had been allowed to fester for years. "Before anyone makes threats they can't take back," I said, calmly taking out my phone, "you should all know that I recorded the conversation I had with Dad at my apartment yesterday." I hit play. My dad's voice filled the room. "Present it to you as a done deal. That way you couldn't get anxious and back out. Your mother figured you'd be more accepting once it was all booked." Then came his admission about using Chloe's card for Leo's expenses. And finally, the audio of him calling me an ungrateful little brat and threatening to cut me out of the family. My grandmother gasped. Uncle Mark's face was beet red. Aunt Susan just stared at my parents, a look of dawning horror on her face. "You recorded that without my consent," Dad blustered. "That's illegal." "Colorado is a one-party consent state," I replied evenly. "As long as one person in the conversation knows it's being recorded, it's perfectly legal." And I knew. The meeting imploded. My mother stormed out of the house, my father trailing behind her after shooting me one last hateful glare. Aunt Susan started grilling Uncle Mark about other arrangements he might have made with my parents. Leo, Chloe, and I ended up in the kitchen, comparing stories and finally seeing the full, ugly pattern. When I left, the family had shattered into factions. The Caribbean cruise was a distant memory, replaced by the immediate, painful reality of who owed what to whom and how deep the deception really went. Driving home, I felt a strange mix of triumph and profound sadness. The family I thought I had was built on a foundation of lies. But for the first time, the truth was out. And in that truth, there was a chance for real healing, no matter how messy the process would be. The Sunday after the disastrous family meeting, I poured all my roiling emotions into a plan. I booked an appointment with my bank's fraud division for Monday morning, found a lawyer specializing in identity theft, and spent hours poring over my past bank statements, documenting every suspicious charge I could find. The pattern stretched back further than I had imagined. Small, odd charges on my credit cards that I'd once dismissed as mistakes or forgotten purchases now looked like test runs. Online orders shipped to my parents' address. Streaming service subscriptions I never signed up for. Restaurant charges from cities I hadn't been to, but where my parents had been traveling. On Monday morning, I met with a fraud specialist at my bank named Alicia. She listened to my story with a grim, professional empathy. "Unfortunately, family-perpetrated identity theft is more common than you'd think," she said. "The emotional ties make it harder for victims to report, and the perpetrators often start small to see what they can get away with before they escalate." She helped me put a fortress around my finances, new accounts with heightened security, credit freezes with all 3 major bureaus, detailed fraud alerts, and 2-factor authentication on every single platform. She also strongly urged me to file a police report. "I know it feels like a huge step to take against your own family," she said, noticing my hesitation, "but creating that official paper trail is your best protection if this gets worse. Without it, It's just your word against theirs. That afternoon, I sat in the office of Erica Levinson, the identity theft attorney. Her office was calm and professional, her diplomas from top-tier law schools hanging discreetly on the wall. Financial abuse within families is a hidden epidemic, she told me after reviewing my notes. That recording of your father is an incredibly powerful piece of evidence. Most victims never get that kind of clear admission of intent. She laid out my options, from a simple cease and desist letter all the way to pressing criminal charges. I chose a middle ground, file a police report to create an official record, and have her send a legal notice to my parents demanding they stop all use of my financial information and cease all contact regarding money. This puts them on formal notice that you're not backing down, Erica explained. The police report probably won't lead to an arrest, given the family dynamic, but it legally establishes you as a victim of a crime. Filing the report at the local police station was a surreal experience. The officer, a man named Martinez, took my statement without judgment, asking pointed questions about how my parents might have gotten my card details and email password. I explained how they could have seen mail at my old apartment, or how my mother often sent digital greeting cards that could have contained spyware. We see this stuff all the time, he said. People think strangers are the biggest threat, but the data shows it's often family or close friends. They have the access and the opportunity. All the while, the family pressure was relentless. My mom showed up at my office on Tuesday, causing a scene in the lobby until security had to escort her out. My dad called my boss, claiming a fake family medical emergency to try and get me on the phone. Aunt Susan sent long, guilt-tripping emails about forgiveness and loyalty. My grandmother left tearful voicemails begging me to make peace before it was too late. The most shocking moment came on Thursday evening. My dad showed up at my apartment again. This time, he was holding a check. $20,000, he announced, holding it out to me. That's more than enough to cover the tickets and a little extra for your trouble. Take it, cash it, and we can all move on from this unfortunate business. No need for lawyers and police reports and all this drama. I recognize the move for what it was, a bribe disguised as an apology, an attempt to drag this back from a criminal matter into a private family squabble. I can't accept that, I said, refusing to touch the check. This isn't about the money. It's about the fact that you stole from me and violated my trust. Don't be absurd, he snapped. Everything is about money. Take the check, call off your lawyer, and let's go back to being a family. Being a family shouldn't require me to accept financial abuse, I replied. I've told you my position. Please leave or I'm calling security. He ripped the check in half, let the pieces flutter to the ground, and left without another word. But through the storm, unexpected support started to surface. My partners at the accounting firm were incredible, immediately putting new protocols in place to screen my calls and visitors. My best friends created a protective bubble around me, taking turns staying over and fielding my texts during the worst of it. But the most surprising support came from within the family. Chloe and I texted every day, sharing tips on securing our finances. Leo and Maya invited me over for dinner and apologized for not speaking up sooner. Even my cousin Ben, who had initially sided with my parents, called me after he discovered they had tried to use his new credit card just one day after the family meeting. 2 weeks after the cruise tickets were purchased, Erica's cease and desist letters went out. The harassing calls and texts slowed to a trickle, though I'd still get the occasional tearful voicemail from my mom about how my cruelty was affecting her health. I started seeing a new therapist doctor, Reed, who specialized in financial abuse. Our first session was a revelation. What you're dealing with is a specific type of trauma, she explained. Financial abuse doesn't just damage your bank account, it wounds your sense of trust, security, and your fundamental understanding of family. Over our weekly sessions, I started to unravel how my parents had normalized this exploitation, building a family culture where setting boundaries was framed as selfishness, and my financial independence was seen not as my own, but as a resource for them to tap. Your response has been incredibly strong, Doctor, Reed told me in our third session. So many victims stay stuck in that cycle of guilt and obligation for years, unable to break free even when they know they're being abused. I still feel guilty sometimes, I admitted. When my mom leaves a message about her blood pressure, or my dad's email mentions family loyalty. That's completely normal, she reassured me. They spent your entire childhood installing those emotional buttons. It's going to take time and practice to disable them. By the 6-week mark, the immediate crisis was over. My parents, after receiving a second, sterner letter from Erica about harassment, had finally stopped contacting me directly. The extended family had fractured and reformed into new alliances, with most of my cousins and my aunt now quietly on my side. My practical protections were all in place: new bank accounts, constant credit monitoring, and a legal file documenting the theft. The emotional healing was a work in progress, but I had the right support system for the journey. As spring turned into summer, the dates of the canceled Caribbean cruise came and went without a word. The mandatory family reunion had been consumed by a much bigger, much-needed reckoning. And in its place, a smaller, more genuine connection was starting to grow between those of us who had finally told the truth. 6 months after I discovered the fraudulent airline tickets, my life was profoundly different. The external changes were obvious. My credit score had bounced back. My new security measures had blocked 2 more attempts to access my accounts, and the legal matters were closed. The internal changes were quieter, but more meaningful. The constant state of high alert I'd been living in had softened into a healthy awareness. The nightmares about financial ruin were gone. The automatic pang of guilt I felt when saying no had faded, though it wasn't gone completely. My contact with my parents was almost non-existent and entirely on my terms. My mother sent a stilted apology that was clearly written with the help of a financial counselor, something the credit card company had likely required. It acknowledged a misunderstanding but never addressed the years of manipulation. My father kept his distance, communicating only through brief, formal emails. The family excommunication he had threatened had sort of happened. I was no longer invited to certain holiday gatherings, but the loss felt less like a punishment and more like a relief. In its place, my relationship with Leo had blossomed. Free from our parents' constant interference, we started talking every week, supporting each other's efforts to achieve true financial and emotional independence. I should have warned you about the tickets, he confessed over brunch one day. I knew they were up to something, but I was just so scared of defying them. You were conditioned to comply, I reminded him. We both were. It takes a long time to unlearn that. Maya, refilling our coffee cups, nodded. Your parents are masters. They had Leo convinced that his loyalty to them was more important than his loyalty to our marriage or even to himself. It took us years to untangle that mess. Leo's progress was tangible. He had just gotten his first new credit card with a decent limit, secured a promotion he would have previously been too scared to take, and was learning to set firm boundaries in his rare conversations with our parents. My support system had also grown to include a small recovery group that met once a month. It was there I met Elena, whose parents had secretly taken out student loans in her name, and Marcus, whose grandmother had used his Social Security number to open credit cards when he was just a teenager. Their stories mirrored mine, creating a bond of shared experience I had never known. The hardest part, Elena said in one meeting, was accepting that people who love you can also exploit you. The two ideas just didn't compute in my head until I realized that love and respect are 2 very different things. That hit me hard. My parents probably did love me in their own way, but they had never respected me. Not my autonomy, not my boundaries, and not my right to my own life. Making that distinction helped me navigate the grief of maintaining my distance from them. On a practical level, my finances were stronger than ever. The crisis had forced me to conduct a full audit of my financial life, and with the help of a certified financial planner who specialized in recovery from economic abuse, I was now in complete control. The violation is often the catalyst, my planner, Mia, told me. It's the painful wake-up call that pushes people to finally claim their financial power. That was definitely true for me. The ticket incident, as traumatic as it was, had been the push I needed. I also discovered a new passion: financial literacy education. I started volunteering with a nonprofit that taught high school students about budgeting, credit scores, and investing. Standing in front of those kids, I often thought about how different my own story might have been if someone had given me that knowledge early on. As the one-year anniversary of the cruise incident approached, I got an email from Aunt Susan. She was hosting a small get-together at her lake house and wanted me to know I was welcome, with absolutely no financial expectations. "I've been thinking a lot about how our family handles money," she wrote. "Your courage made me see patterns I had accepted my whole life. I'm committed to doing better." I went, cautiously optimistic. The gathering was a turning point. Only the family members who had acknowledged the dysfunction were there. It was quiet, honest, and for the first time, it felt real. On the last night, as we sat around a fire pit, Chloe raised her glass. "To boundaries," she said simply, "and to the courage it takes to build them." I felt tears well up in my eyes. The road to that moment had been brutal, but the alternative, staying silent and trapped in that cycle of abuse, would have been so much worse. Financial abuse only works in the dark. By dragging it into the light, I hadn't just saved myself. I had given others in my family the permission to save themselves too. The family was changed forever. Some parts were lost, but the parts that remained were stronger and more authentic. As I drove home, I thought about the journey. The woman who got that first group text about a mandatory cruise was gone. In her place was a woman who knew that financial boundaries are emotional boundaries, that love without respect is a hollow thing, and that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and for your family is to say no. Have you ever had to set a difficult financial boundary with a family member? The strength it takes to defend yourself in those moments is incredible. If you've been through something similar, you are definitely not alone. Share your experience in the comments, or tell us about a boundary you're proud of setting. Like this video if my story resonated with you, subscribe for more stories about navigating tough family dynamics, and share it with anyone who might need to hear that protecting your financial well-being is not selfish. It's essential. Thank you for listening, and always remember, real family wants to see you thrive, not just survive their demands.